Ladies and gentlemen, Midnight Launch is about to get personal. Technically. We'd like to talk, myself being Michael, joined by Robert.
Hello.
And Jack.
Hi.
And today we're going to talk about vulnerability of just about probably the two main aspects of video games, of the character and of the player, and how they sort of mix around with the game. So when I start thinking about being vulnerable, when I talk about being able to be affected by just about every single system in the game, and being able to be really affected by everything in the game. So I'd probably look at something like as it seems like Minecraft, where you directly affect the environment, and the environment directly affects you, and it's sort of this really big sort of cyclical thing where how you move throughout the world is how the world reacts to you. So, but that isn't so much developing a character as it is just a really simple form of interaction.
Yep. Well, a cool thing about Minecraft is you can always play it safe.
Mm-hmm.
You can always, maintain your resources. But there's always that drive to see what's around the corner, and that character vulnerability that you definitely see in, hardcore mode is definitely a lot more in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And, harder difficulties affect gameplay like we've talked about before. But another interesting thing is the vulnerability of characters has kind of been taken away in some series.
Like
for instance, in the Hitman trilogy, because the first one doesn't really count. So you have 2, you have Blood Money, and you have Contracts.
Mm-hmm.
The vulnerability of the character really diminished in Absolution with the copying of Splinter Cell convictions, like stop, target, shoot kind of thing, with their little action bars.
Okay.
And that works. And the same thing with Dead Space.
Yeah.
So the vulnerability of your characters kind of declined with this new ammo system.
Yeah, we talked about that in the Dead Space 3 video.
Yeah.
So everything's really streamlined, and everything's kind of more actiony than people would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like
that's kind of generalization there. You gotta
also
allow people that do like it.
Yeah, that's also a result of the company, making the game with a more action focus. As a result, an action hero is supposed to be vulnerable. They're supposed to be a strong, immediately relatable, just a badass person for you to go through the story with, and certainly in vulnerable games you can be very attached to the person you're going through the story with, but when you make it very actiony, it's not so much of being vulnerable. It's all about kicking ass and taking names, and in Isaac's case, stomping everything to death.
There are vulnerable action heroes, though. Like, this isn't a game, but John McClane in the first Die Hard gets the shit beaten out of him. He's got like 1.5 pounds of glass in his feet at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
and that was the point of his character. Is he was able to get beat up. He wasn't Rambo, at least not back then.
Yeah.
Well, you see the same thing in Spec Ops: The Line and the new Tomb Raider, where the character just takes a beating, and although willing to continue this pursuit of story-driven narrative, the vulnerability of the character is kind of what really makes the narrative to begin with. Definitely. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, you do look like hell by the end of Spec Ops.
Yeah. Well, did you guys play that?
Spec Ops,
yeah. I just got a copy of it for buying BioShock Infinite, so I'm gonna probably play it. Maybe. I'd probably prefer to get it when. I'd probably prefer to play it when I get my new computer. But
it's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's going to be interesting because I've always admitted that I like third-person cover-based shooters.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're a big Gears fan, aren't you?
Yeah, Gears of War, and I liked that Mass Effect sort of went that way, but they kind of needed to because Mass Effect 1 the combat just did not flow very well.
It was rough.
Yeah, but it's gonna be interesting because that game is, people are like, oh, it's meant to sort of like make fun of those games where you blindly follow orders, and it's really generic combat because that's just what those games sort of devolved into, is really generic, just sit behind a wall and shoot dudes. So it's gonna be interesting for me as a really big fan of third-person shooters, but I'm looking forward to it because of because of how well regarded the game is for what it does. So.
Well, the gameplay isn't exactly bad, but after a while you're just like, this is really boring. The combat's getting really stale after a while.
And to relate that to what the whole topic of this video is, that there are characters in that game that just straight up get, and no one is safe in Spec Ops.
Destroyed.
Yeah, it's sort of like
get fucked up in that game.
It's sort of like Game of Thrones or Walking Dead, where you might, it's main character. Nope.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
Except for that you know who you're playing, but like somebody you think is important, they're gone.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of other games where you think main characters. If you guys played BioShock 2, there's a ton of characters. Well, not a ton, but there's a lot of characters who they can be killed because you get that story-driven narrative that's like either kill or save type deal. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the vulnerability of not only player characters but like story-driven characters is really important as well.
Like the Little Sisters.
Like the Little Sisters. Well, Little Sisters is kind of like a minor role because
that was sort of the crux of the game. But like I know what you're talking about. There are three different people who they do something horrible to. They do something dickish to your character, and you can either choose to kill them or let them live. And if you kill them, then people just get pissed off at you. And if you let them live, it typically comes back to help you. Sort of like sort of like in BioShock 1, where if you saved more Little Sisters, they left you presents. It's that sort of thing. And there's an achievement associated with not killing them and saving a lot of the Little Sisters and all that sort of stuff.
Not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, I feel like the Little Sisters thing is just kind of really easy.
Yeah, well, it's you walk up to it, you kill a Big Daddy, you walk up to her, and you press a button. It's not that hard. Let's be honest here.
Well, I mean, like, if you were smart with your ammo, everything was relatively easy.
Yeah. If you go to plasmids or whatever. So, this is, if you want to go, if you want to go into like NPCs, I could definitely think about the fact that almost every single character in Fallout games, and specifically the modern ones, seem to be very, very aware that they could die at any moment. And it's they look like it. They look disheveled and like the world's falling apart, which it pretty much is. And it very much so seems like, I mean, you could very well just take out a fat man and blow an entire town to bits.
And who didn't do that to Megaton at some point?
It's very true. Well, that's typically you just nuke them from Tenpenny Tower. But it's always difficult because vulnerability all depends on how the game's designed. If it's supposed to be a very linear game, typically the characters don't seem as vulnerable. If it's a big open game, they're probably going to be a lot more active in terms of being able to let you just completely screw over somebody. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In Fallout, you're right. They do seem like people are very wary. They're kind of a grim outlook on life. But in another Bethesda game like Skyrim, people are just going about their lives. They say, "Well, my crops are failing this year." It's like, well, big fucking deal. You're not gonna get eaten by red scorpions.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that they're very aware that 200 years ago, shit went down, and you see the results of that. You see all the animals that are mutated. You see the ghouls, which are people who are ridiculously horrible.
Yeah, weren't they all in that museum too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, museum of museum of history. Yeah. I know that game so bloody well for good reason. And it's always sort of subjective to the player. How much they actually care about it. Because there could be a vulnerable character, like, I'd say that, Tali from Mass Effect is represented as being sort of vulnerable, and, she's isolated, and she's on that pilgrimage.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
But, but at the same time, it's impossible for her to die until Mass Effect 2.
Effect 2, yeah.
And even that's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm. And, I accept that she's a vulnerable character, and it's sort of like, when the whole ending controversy went down, where she was like, where the face that was shown was something really simple, I was like, because I never had that attraction to Tali, because, I accept that she's a vulnerable character, but that's it. I didn't get attached to her. And I think vulnerability is really cross-dependent on attachment to the characters. If you don't care about them, if they don't do something to really make you accept that they're vulnerable, like I said, in Fallout, when you know that when they're aware that they could get attacked by bandits or something, I accept I accept she's a vulnerable character, but I didn't really care about her until the stuff with her father in Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
Then I was like,
have a whole lot going for her in the first one.
Yeah, I mean, well, granted, you did save her from being attacked, and she had valuable information from the Shadow Broker that helped her cut down Saren, and then she just sort of tagged along with you, and they didn't really develop her much. But Mass Effect 2, she definitely saw serious growth in that game. So
well, there's a couple other games where that's very present. There's a lot of characters in both Crisis 2 and Crisis 3 where they're going through tough times, and yeah, there's a lot of emotional stuff. But it's kind of really hard to sympathize with them when you're just like, well, I can just, go invisible and run away. I'm not affected by this at all.
Yeah.
And, the characters die and stuff and you move on. But it just kind of segments your, superpower abilities. And yeah, I've been playing it on, the hardest difficulty with, a HUD-on and stuff. It's still really easy just to not die, despite, utilizing all your stuff. So I feel like even though there's a lot of characters that are really, really easy to sympathize with, if they're just breaking up your invincible action, then I feel like it doesn't even hold that much weight. Whereas Spec Ops: The Line, your character itself is going through a lot of stuff, and so were a lot of other people. So it's a lot more easy to empathize with.
Now, are we keeping this in single player, or are we talking about vulnerability? Can that be talking about multiplayer too?
That's difficult because. I mean,
because that'll really change the way multiplayer works.
Yeah,
Gears takes 1,000,000 bullets to kill somebody, and COD you can die by getting slapped in the face.
Same with Battlefield. There's a lot of vulnerability in Battlefield once you get into the front lines.
God, you want to talk about vulnerability? The Assassin's Creed multiplayer in Revelations and Brotherhood and 3, man, you don't know who's going to stab you and who isn't, and you're just like. You are one touch away from death from anyone, from any direction, and that's just something that's really crazy.
Well, same with Crisis 3's Hunter mode, when everyone's invisible and you're just trying to hold yourself accountable.
Or the Hidden, that mod that you see a lot of YouTube videos of.
Yeah. What other multiplayer games have really interesting vulnerability? Besides hardcore modes of anything?
That's it.
Talking about hardcore stuff, you could always mention Counter-Strike.
Oh, that's true. Well, I mean, vulnerability in Counter-Strike is a bit different because, I don't want to say it's vulnerability because anybody can just run around the corner.
Yeah, I guess
but
so.
Everything you do in Counter-Strike is just kind of I don't want to say a chess move because that's not it. But everything you do is really calculated. So vulnerability, yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability, and there's always going to be tense moments. But
there's a big difference between
comes out of nowhere.
There's a big difference between emotional vulnerability, which is sort of what I'm trying to get at, versus just character vulnerability and the fact that you die in a headshot. I think that's a big difference in that environmentally. You look at Counter-Strike, you just accept that your characters are going to die, and you just wait for the next round. Whereas in Assassin's Creed, I don't want to die, so I can continue to gain benefits and continue to be the best assassin in this free-for-all. And definitely in a free-for-all game mode, I feel more vulnerable than a team-based Counter-Strike.
Oh, yeah. Oh, free-for-all can be insane.
If I were to talk about a game that we've done a video on, Faster Than Light, that game, you are ridiculously fragile. You could warp into a zone and just have your everything taken down. Have 4 Mantis warped on board, and you just get rolled.
Wait, for what game?
Faster Than Light. We've done 2 videos on it now. The second one went up yesterday, in fact. Wink. So plug our own shit.
YouTube.com/Midnight Lunch Gaming.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So that's definitely important for a game that's a very single player oriented experience to give you that sensation. And I'm just looking at my desktop right now. I'm looking at Plants vs. Zombies, and man, that game has some really fragile moments in it where you're kind of on the edge of your seat, going, "Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna make it?"
Yeah. But, I mean, there's always that. Like, I feel like most first-person shooters have pretty vulnerable situations, especially in games where you can get down, like Borderlands 2 co-op and Borderlands 1 co-op. The second you go down in multiplayer, you're just kind of like, shit.
Call of Duty Zombies.
Definitely that, especially with the Black Ops 2, with how you can like move about so much.
Unless somebody gets to you pretty quick, you're just boned.
Yeah, or if you miss the bus.
Yeah.
You get killed pretty quickly.
Yeah, with those little baby things that jump on you.
Oh, fuck those. Fuck
God.
those. That just makes that map so annoying.
Yep, just spam melee forever.
Yeah.
And then another one jumps on you. It's like kind of like, I don't know. I had a metaphor there, and then it just whoop out my ear.
Dropped it. Yeah.
Isn't that how it always happens though?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm gonna say something smart and intrinsic, and it's gone.
You were gonna about 5 minutes before we started this episode, and then and then you're like, "Oh, I was gonna ask you guys something," and then
I forgot. Then I remembered it again. It was about Assassin's Creed Black Flag, but that will be for later.
Speaking of which, I feel like the multiplayer in Assassin's Creed, you're way more vulnerable in the single player, which is weird because you're like the most underpowered guy. Like, there's like tons of people who can kill you, and yet it's so much. You feel so much more vulnerable against one person with a blade in the multiplayer.
Yeah. I never feel vulnerable in single player because there are like 12 guys around me and I can take them all on, no problem.
Oh, yeah, Brotherhood, you were a killing machine.
Yeah.
They brought in those, was that kill chains or something like that?
Yeah, well, they added those in Revelations and 3, which is, I mean, it's helpful, but I don't know. I always wish there was like a harder difficulty, just to make the game feel a lot more tense and to give the game some scope.
I'm going to speak from my designer point of view here. It's all about what type of experience you want the player to have. Do you want the player to feel vulnerable, or do you want the player to feel powerful? And it's always weird. It's always difficult to find that exact balance where the player accepts that I could die really easily, or I could just move smoothly, effectively, and dominate combat. I would say that Deus Ex Human Revolution did that really well for me, because I accept that Adam could die really quickly, but if I moved stealthily, if I poked and I prodded and I darted and I choked out people, that I definitely excuse me, I definitely had power, but I still accept that I could very easily be shot and killed.
Oh, the Arkham games do that too.
Oh yeah.
If you do it right, you are a force of nature. But the minute you screw up, it's going to hit you hard. And the best especially on the harder difficulties.
And the best part is, it's your fault mechanically.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like Super Meat Boy. Holy shit! You want to talk about vulnerability? People were talking about how they watch a replay, and it's like thousands of little meat people.
Yep.
Just like a wave of meat, and then just slamming against this one saw or something, and then like this one meat figure just whoop, moving on. It's just like, I'm free, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, where it's your fault, where the game isn't screwing you over. You just need to do it right.
Well, it's definitely one of the games we haven't brought up yet is Dark Souls. Dark Souls does this really well, where the entire atmosphere and the entire difficulty is based on vulnerability.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
I would definitely agree I would definitely agree with that. I've wanted to play one of those games, but I haven't yet. So.
And I've just heard all the.
Get it on PC. Get it on PC for sure.
I've just heard the best version. There are people saying that it makes them rage so much that I just think, I don't have a good history with getting really mad at games. Like
neither do I, dude.
See, I just if I go something, I'll just mentally just get pissed off with it and just not pick it up. So I'm just like, oh, well, this kind of sucks, and I'm just put it down.
See, I don't do that. I just keep going until I'm pretty sure I'm going to have an aneurysm, or there's going to be a blood clot somewhere.
God, and that's the point. I've had times like that.
Yeah, that's the point when I make myself stop.
Where I'm sitting there going, I want to fucking murder whoever programmed this goddamn thing in.
Yeah.
I've had so many times like that where I just want to punch a baby, but God, there are times where I've wanted to punch babies before, which is actually kind of fun. Don't tell anyone I said that.
Not that you'd know.
I haven't punched babies. Wink. Wink.
A lot of winking in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's underlying themes. Well, let's talk about MMOs for a second. Are there any MMOs that just, like, make you feel really vulnerable?
Probably not MMORPGs, because, let's be honest, you can just respawn really easily at the cost of, money or whatever. But I'd probably say, like, the first-person shooter MMOs, like PlanetSide, where, it simulates, more or less, this futuristic experience of being in an actual military. And the thing is that, it's because it's a military thing. You have to accept that in the military, the generals don't care about how many people die. The generals care about getting the objective completed. So that is ridiculously akin to vulnerability, and that you have to just accept that you're probably going to end up dying when you're taking this base, but as long as the objective is completed, that's what matters the most.
We're talking about MMOs. If you guys remember City of Heroes, I don't know if this counts as vulnerability, but when you died, there would be a section of your XP bar that would make it harder for you to earn back the XP that you lost. So when you died,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and when I was 12 years old playing this game, I thought, fuck that, and that's why I stopped playing it. But I didn't like that much.
Dude,
but
I would say,
I don't know if it counts as vulnerability or not.
I would say that RuneScape probably did that really well, where if you died, you lost everything.
Oh god, no, there's a couple things you could save. Like, you could save, like, armor, but nothing else.
Yeah, I was like, there's a reason why it took me forever to want to actually go and take on that final dragon, whatever it was, the green dragon. I was like, fuck that.
Well, there's a lot of games today that do that, I think. I know Guild Wars 2 gets hated on a lot, but there's a lot of events, and if nobody's there, like if a zone is like underpopulated, you just don't want to walk around, because there's a lot of events where like you'll just get murdered instantly. And there's a lot of in any not WoW per se, but like you have World of Warcraft, you have like Knights of the Old Republic, and you have Guild Wars 2 and stuff like that, where like all these large raid monsters. The second you feel separated from your team at all, the second you guys don't feel synced, you instantly just like feel like you're in a really shitty place. You just like can't get out of it.
Yep.
I definitely understand that, man. Times when I was raiding in WoW and I had to do like solo pulls, I was like, all right, misdirect the tank. Here he goes. And I sneak forward slowly. Pull the guy, okay, aggro transferred, alright, now I'm good. But, it's temporary vulnerability that can really just move you to make actions, and, then you get like psychological things where if you feel vulnerable, can the developer do stuff to, affect you more? And you can look at Amnesia and go, that's a clear instance, because it's the fundamental thing of you don't have any way to defend yourself other than hiding. As a result, you are inhumanely vulnerable, and the developers are able to exploit that to no end with sounds.
Yeah.
And
I only got about an hour into that game, and I like horror games.
Did you get bored, or did you just get too scared, or what?
It was really. I think my only problem is I just got sleepy.
Yeah,
it was like 2 in the morning, and then I just never picked up the game.
Well, one thing I didn't like is they really, really like racked up the horror really quickly, like halfway through. And so, but then they just like made it like really cheap. Like I was just like, yeah, the horror part's kind of done for me. These monsters aren't really scary. But like the sounds and stuff were a lot scarier to me than just like seeing a monster run after me.
Yeah, and there's some psychological vulnerability there. They can detect who you are.
But if we're talking about like small time frames where like you just feel incredibly vulnerable, I definitely want to say Battlefield 3, because like although the destruction isn't a lot, the destruction isn't a lot, there's still like a lot of stuff going on your screen. You're constantly getting suppressed if you're playing as a medic. You're constantly on that field trying to like wonder if like should I revive this person, or will like I hurt our team even more by not having anybody spawn on me. And especially if there's a tank nearby, then and you're just like hiding under the cover, and you're just like shit, please don't see me.
Yeah.
And it's just like this really fragile moment of you want to take the shot, but you don't know how much health it has, and you don't know how efficient you're going to be towards him. Just kind of this gamble.
I can understand that, dude. So it's pretty clear that, you know, to kind of leaning towards wrapping it up here. We've been talking for quite a while. So, in general, vulnerability is something that, when done right, really allows us to appreciate the game. Yeah?
Most definitely.
And, so, in general, can we say that, do you think that developers are going to try to make more vulnerable characters in games?
I think so. I mean, if you look at any of the slowest, franchises to move, you're going to see, you know, one of the things that I think is one of the slowest franchises to move is Call of Duty. And you're looking into, like, their stories and stuff, and, you know, their multiplayer, and they're trying to slow the players down, not so much, but they're trying to find more ways to make them feel more vulnerable. So, you know, they're not just, like, sitting there and waiting, you know, and especially in the single player, although not the greatest single player, I'll admit, there's a lot of times when, like, there's just a lot of emotional stuff going on, and they just didn't want to feel you like a gun-toting badass.
Although there are always times when people are going to want that power trip, and there's always going to be a time and a place for that. So maybe we'll see more vulnerable characters, and maybe we won't. Maybe we'll see more huge guys in power armor stomping stuff like Isaac.
Well, you can definitely see that where with like Tomb Raider, they're definitely showing the vulnerable side of Lara Croft. So
we got stuff coming up.
We got stuff coming down the line that I think will probably fit the bill.
Sweet. So thank you for joining us. This was Midnight Launch's Minicast discussion on vulnerability. Join us next week for AAA gameplay, indie gameplay, and our podcast this weekend. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See you later, guys.